Nothing Personal starts in 30 seconds. It's just business. This is Nothing Personal.
Here you go.
Caved. That's the Nothing Personal word of the day. Today is Thursday, February 6th, 2025. And today's episode is brought to you by DraftKings. DraftKings, the crown is yours. Caved. Spelunking. What executives do when they're up against a deadline. They feel as though, I got to move my player. 3 o'clock's going to come. I can't have Jimmy Butler. He's only suspended for indefinite. Wait, should I just let him rot at the end of the bench like Samson said? Or should I give him his wish that he denied was his wish and send him to the Golden State Warriors? Sitting around last night, everything's going great. Amazing meal, digesting. Big news that Jimmy Butler was traded by the Miami Heat to the Golden State Warriors in not a 1, not a 2, not a 3, not a 4, a 5-team deal. Information coming quickly. No one knows who is going where. A fan is seen on video taping himself first row behind the Heat bench while the Heat were playing the Sixers, telling Kevin Love and his teammates the fact that Jimmy Butler got traded to the Golden State Warriors. Meanwhile, Steve Kerr was in the locker room having a closed-door meeting, hanging his head low because Andrew Wiggins was being traded to the Miami Heat. What looked like an amazing deal for the Miami Heat, turning Jimmy Butler, a total overpaid malcontent who had poisoned the well in Miami, whose relationship had ended the way all other relationships with him have ended, professionally, of course, with tears, anger, frustration, and, of course, a journey. Pat Riley said to himself, I'm going to have to make the best of this situation. Let me see about the Suns, which is where he wants to go. Is there any way that I can get Durant? That was rumored. Sitting here in Meadowlark Media, ready to record an episode, pretending that we're live, but we were going to do it early. Kevin Durant is a member of the Miami Heat. Let's get it out there so we can be first. Thank God we didn't waste 24 minutes of our lives doing that. Since Durant had said earlier in the day, no Warriors, and then there was no deal to be made for the Heat. So Butler goes to the Warriors. Well, before we even get to what happened with the Heat, because it's a major issue that's happening, that right now we're live at 8:03 a.m. Eastern, or it could be 10:03 if you're on the DraftKings network. The NBA trade deadline is not for 6 hours and 57 minutes or 4 hours and 57 minutes, your choice. Or if you're listening to this later, it's already passed, but I was live now. The Miami Heat have a major problem because they thought that they were going to be under the luxury tax. They thought they would have the exemption, the ability to be in the buyout market. But then Kyle Anderson, who was traded to them as part of the Warriors deal, is now still a Heat. But the rumor was that he was traded to Toronto. And then somehow Toronto said, I don't think I like that deal. And so the Heat were already past pregnant. They were fully birthing, so they couldn't say no to the Butler to the Warriors deal. So now the Heat are in a position where they're on the clock. They've got to get rid of payroll immediately. There's no way that the Heat make this deal without saving money because it's just not worth it. For Jimmy Butler, how does this happen, Coca? I would love to speak to Jimmy Butler's agent, but I will tell you that it is out of the question that he did not have conversations with the Warriors in advance. Obviously, he had come out already with that list that was rumored by Shams, and then Jimmy Butler's agent said, no way. That's totally untrue. Then Jimmy Butler comes out and says, I'm not going to sign an extension. I'm going to pick up my player option. That's the best I'm going to do at $52.4 million. No sooner is the deal announced by Shams, who is crushing it while Woj is night-night in his bed, lucky bastard, that there's word that Jimmy Butler signed an extension. I figured that can't be true. Let me check it. Let me check the sources. And it is true that Jimmy Butler was given 2 years, wait for it, $121 million by the Warriors. They've lived with him for minus 5 seconds. The old trade for a guy and extend him before we know whether or not he is a pleasure in the clubhouse, whether or not he's going to enjoy life on the West Coast. Not only did they make sure that he was going to be there next year, but they tacked on a guaranteed year. And Jimmy Butler said, I'm 36 years old. They're going to pay me $60 million a year when I'm 36 and 37 to play with an aging Steph Curry, an aging Draymond Green, without Andrew Wiggins, who was one of their top scorers, a big part of their team. And Jimmy Butler said, hell yeah, forget Phoenix. I'll go there after. Maybe when I ruin my welcome with the Warriors, I'll move on to the Phoenix Suns. What does it all mean for these teams? Does Golden State, Steve Kerr, go to bed last night saying, I made a promise. Steph Curry and I met the media, and we told our fans that we would not mortgage our future for today, that we are not good enough to do that. We are in 10th place. We are in the play-in tournament. We're going to be smart. We're not going to chase Amy. I guess Mike Dunleavy Jr. did not get the memo, or maybe it was Joe LaCobe who said, I think we should try again. I don't think we should waste any years of Steph Curry. I think Jimmy Butler pairing him, we'll have a big three. Maybe we'll call it one of the top 5 duos in basketball is what they're trying to leak out. Steph and Jimmy is a top 5 duo. I'd take Wemby and Fox, the new duo in San Antonio, before I'd take today's Steph and Jimmy. I'm not talking about 4 years ago. So the Golden State Warriors did exactly what they said they weren't going to do. They got older, they got poorer, and they didn't get better. Now, some of you may have thought that because the lines moved in a way that I was surprised. Their odds of winning the Pacific Division increased. Their odds of winning the Western Conference went from, what was it, Coca, plus 4,000 to plus 3,000, as though, wow, that is a huge difference. They got 25% better. Here's a little surprise when it comes to that gambling. Which team gets better, which team doesn't? Does it feel better to make it out of the first round? I'd like you to go back right now and name to me every first-round matchup in last year's NBA playoffs and tell me who lost in the first round. It's a memory that you lose immediately once the series ends. You can't even name it by June, still in the same year of the playoffs. It doesn't matter. Getting incrementally better from plus 4,000 to plus 3,000, the Warriors have the 9th best odds to win the Western Conference. 9th. Maybe it was 10th before they got Jimmy. You think Steve Kerr is looking himself in the mirror and saying, oh, I better start making sure my ring finger is still the same size? Give me a break. From the Heat standpoint, they get to say, we got rid of a problem. Is that the object? My view is you're trying to build a winning team. You're trying to figure out if Bam and Tyler Hero are enough. Do you need a third? Who's going to be the third? It's certainly not Andrew Wiggins. Does it matter? Is the flexibility into 2026 what Pat Riley was more concerned about? If so, you can't take Kyle Johnson without him being Kyle Anderson, without him being already moved. So you've got two teams that are making headlines that, in my opinion, go to bed last night, wake up this morning, and say, wow, I still have crow's feet next to my eyes. Another player was involved in this trade, and we're going to have to talk about him. His name is Dennis Schroeder. Dennis Schroeder is a player who's played on Coca taught me this pre-show, and I'm going to get it wrong. 7 teams in 4 years. 7 teams in 4 years. Now, glass half full. 7 teams wanted Dennis Schroeder. Glass half empty. 6 teams did not want Dennis Schroeder. Why is his name even coming across my lips 10 minutes into a show on deadline day when we haven't even gotten to the New York Metropolitans and my ability to crush Scott Boras? Because Dennis Schroeder said something that I am not going to let pass. Just yesterday, prior to dinner being interrupted, Dennis Schroeder compared the NBA trade deadline to slavery. And this is a quote. It's like modern slavery. It's modern slavery at the end of the day. Everybody can decide where you're going, even if you have a contract. Yeah, of course, we make a lot of money and we can feed our families. But at the end of the day, if they say you're not coming to work tomorrow, you're going over there, they can decide that. They got to change that a little bit. I'd like to introduce Dennis to the concept of contract assignment. The contract that you sign in the NBA allows for your contract to be assigned to any other NBA franchise. It doesn't allow you to be a highly paid toll collector. It doesn't allow you to be a highly paid podcast producer. It doesn't even allow you to be an assistant to the traveling secretary. The only way that your contract can be assigned, that, by the way, you signed, is to another NBA franchise. There are players who have brought this up before to me. It's totally unfair. We are biting our nails. We're picking our cuticles. We're hoping for no infection right up to the deadline, where we are saying to ourselves, where do we go? What am I going to do for housing? What are my kids going to do? It's such amazing stress. And I've said to the players the same thing every time. Do you worry about rain delays, rainouts? Do you worry about plane crashes as a passenger? What exactly are you worrying about that you can control? The minute you signed a contract, you gave up control. The minute you sit in 69B on Spirit, you've given up control. The minute that you decide that you want to make $13 million a year, which is gross, so let's say that it's $6.5 million a year, assuming a 50% effective tax rate, the trade that you've made, because you don't get $6.5 million net for nothing. Maybe if you invent something, maybe if you then license something, but then you still have to perform. I always found it hard to believe, because what I would say to the players, and it's going to sound maybe a little tough, I said, just out of curiosity, what is your market rate? And I've said this about myself too, so it's not unique to players. What is your market rate outside of a basketball court or a baseball diamond? And I'm not impugning your intelligence. I'm merely asking about the market. Can you make 700 grand? That's the major league minimum. If I asked Dennis Schroeder what he'd have to do to make $13 million in gross wages, he would look at me and say, there's not one thing in the world. And I would say to him, I agree. I feel the same about myself. No sooner did Dennis Schroeder say it, he got traded again. Dennis Schroeder is now joining the Church of the Latter-day Saints. He's going to Utah. Maybe I'll see him on the slopes in Park City, unless he's traded by then. And before I move on, I am not making light of slavery, quite obviously. What I am doing is trying to give people perspective that when you're going to drop a comparison It's like comparing things to the Holocaust, comparing things to actual slavery. You need to be in a better position to make the argument, and Dennis Schroeder is the exact wrong person to make that type of argument. I would assume you're not going to hear much about that in his introductory lack of scrum in Utah with one microphone. Though Ryan Smith may say hi to him. You remember we talked about the Lakers and their deadline. Was it yesterday on Levitard or on Nothing Personal? I can't remember which, where we said the Lakers can't be done with getting Luka. They got to get a big man. And Rob Pelinka had said in his leather coat, looking like Rob Lowe, that we are going to make sure, but there aren't a lot of big men out there. So let's everyone take a breath. We may not be able to wave a wand. There is a way to wave a wand in sports. And believe me, I've done that waving. Waving a wand is equal to overpaying to the point of night sweats. You can wave a wand if you are a general manager or a team president. I can get anybody. All I have to do is completely overpay. The Los Angeles Lakers took the 2031 first-round pick that Nico Harrison, by God, should have gotten from Pelinka. And Pelinka sent it to the no more Jordan Charlotte Hornets. But not just the 2031 pick. They did more. They sent Cam Reddish, who was a really good college player, not so good in the pros. Who cares? Throw in. But they also sent from the Lakers LeBron's guy. Remember when they drafted Dallin Connect? I got that wrong, right, Coco? How bad? Dalton? That's all? I got Connect right and I got Dalton wrong? All right, we'll do it again. 4869. Remember when LeBron James was so happy that the Lakers drafted Dalton Connect? I just had to look at my sheet to make sure I got it right a second time. Well, guess what? Traded. Connect. Reddish. The 2031 pick. A swap in 2030. Doesn't matter what that is. And guess who they acquired? From the Charlotte Hornets. They got a big man. Here's the thing, Lakers fans. You're going to look at Mark Williams and you're going to say, this is a great match for Luka. They're going to show highlights of the Charlotte Hornets center, Mark Williams, getting lobs sent to him right over the rim, him taking one large hand and dunking it down with authority. You're going to show him with his 7+ foot frame, and you're going to say, this replaces Anthony Davis. Now we've got Luka, LeBron, and Mark Williams, and we still kept Reeves. This is amazing. And then you'll look and say, wait a minute, the guy never plays. Talk about making a move out of desperation in order to try to save a season when you know you've done the biggest trade you could do by getting Luka, and you know your team still isn't good enough. It's sort of like trading for Jimmy Butler and realizing your team's not good enough. Trading for Luka and saying the same thing. You say to yourself and to Jeannie Buss, we'll do it. We're going to wave a wand to get Mark Williams. Mark my words. Hear it now and listen to me later. The Los Angeles Lakers with Luka and with Mark Williams will not be in the Western Conference Finals. They're lucky if they make it to the Western Conference semifinals. When you look at their odds to win the Western Conference, Coco will tell you that they are behind Oklahoma City for sure. They're behind the Denver Nuggets, guaranteed. They're lucky if they're even third. And the fact is that they are third to win the West. Wait, but if they're third to win the West, Coco, that means they're not favored to be in the Western Conference Finals. So I'm going to go ahead and make that my official wait to see for today. Following this amazing trade of getting Luka and the big man from the wand waving, the Los Angeles Lakers will not make an appearance in the Western Conference Finals. Wait to see. Wait to sees are something that I do, and I have total accountability. We have a spreadsheet. Amazingly, Coco, we have new listeners every day, which is, I couldn't be more thankful. But I guess I have to keep reminding people to go on David Sampson podcast, because someone tweeted at me yesterday or Instagrammed at me at David P. Sampson, where could I get a list of your top 100 movies? It's on davidsamsonpodcast.com. There's a link. You can check it out. Last night at 3 a.m., I was watching a movie. I had a terrible night last night, Coca. I got no sleep. I ended up watching Flow, which I'll review at another time, nominated for International Feature and Animated. And I also caught up on Severance. And I was thinking I want to redo my top 100 because I'm already into February and I haven't done it, but I didn't do it. But it's on davidsamsonpodcast.com. You'll also see all of my wait to sees because we have accountability. So if you go back to February 13th of 2024, just about a year ago, you'll see that I told you that Pete Alonso will re-sign with the Mets. If you go back to January 8th of this year, I promised you that Pete Alonso would get under 9 years, $214 million, which is the number that his new agent, Scott Boras, said that would be a number that makes sense. Pete Alonso's 30 years old. Sign him to 39. Pay that man his money. Stevie Cohn takes the microphone at a fan event. We played you some clips of that a couple weeks ago, whenever it was. And he said, I'm not happy with Boras. I'm not giving in. I am not going to allow Boras to manipulate this situation. Scott Boras came out and said, manipulate. This is standard what I'm asking for. Steve Cohn said, fine. I'm going to wait it out. And wait it out he did. An ovation. I'm giving Steve Cohn an ovation, and God knows I don't do it often. Steve Cohn has crushed Scott Boras because Pete Alonso last night, in a move maybe designed to be hidden behind the NBA trade deadline and Super Bowl week, which, can you imagine? We're barely talking about it. Adam Silver is so happy. Do you think Roger Goodell opens up his apps and sees all the NBA trades and says, I can't wait for the deadline to pass because normally we're in the news, and now the only way I can get in the news is talking about 18 games? Adam Silver to Roger Goodell, up yours, man. And then Rob Manfred says, we got spring training starting. We got regular season, teams reporting. We're going to Tokyo. Let's go. Think Pete Alonso got a little nervous that the Mets are about to report and Stevie Cohn was not budging? How did that call go? Remember, Pete Alonso fired his agent because he got poached by Scott Boras, because he was promised by Scott, oh, I'm going to get you paid. You turned down $100 million with that other agent. Don't you worry. I'm going to crush that. My name is Scott Boras, and I'm committed to you, Pete Alonso. Hold on, I got Juan on the other phone. Steve Cohn said to Scott Boras, you got me with Juan Soto. If you think Pete Alonso is Juan Soto, you think I'm going to give in to anything you're asking? You got another thing coming. Scott Boras had to call Pete Alonso. He had to call him yesterday and say, Pete, we got a small issue. They're actually not moving. I don't know what happened. I used to have a spell over all the octogenarians. Now there's a bunch of new owners, and as it turns out, they're not doing what I want every time. This can't be. Hold on, Pete. I'll speak to Steve one more time. Steve said, Scott, my best offer. I will make you two offers. I'll offer you 3 years at $71 million, 71 guaranteed total. Or if you want, I'll do 2 years at 54. That's it. Boras looked at Steve Cohn and said, please, you're killing me, Smalls. You cannot make me go back to Pete Alonso. Hold on, let me get my friend Alex, my associate, to make the call because I can't be seen as someone who is this large and abject failure. Alonso picks up the phone and says, this Scott, what'd you do for me? Hey, get me Scott. How come Scott doesn't talk to me anymore? How come he doesn't love me? You know what? I'll just bet on myself. Pete Alonso signed a 2-year deal. He's getting $30 million this year, about $9 million more than the qualifying offer. That's it. $30 million. Then he can opt out. Do you think Boras said to him, Coca, this is what I imagine. Oh, I did this for Chapman and for Snell. Don't you worry. We got you covered. Well, what about Bellinger, Montgomery? Forget them. We're talking about Chapman and Snell. Chapman's 32. You're only 30. I got the idiotic San Francisco Giants to overpay Chapman so much that they're going to regret it starting a day after yesterday. But you're going to get the same thing. But Scott, I don't really want to leave New York. I love the city. I'm the polar bear, and we have such a good team with your other client, Juan, and we're building something here with the second highest payroll. Look at this. We're like at 328 million. The only one we're looking up to is the Dodgers. Why would I want to leave that? Oh, that's right, because I want to get paid. Pete Alonso did it to himself. When you fire your agent and hire Scott Boras because you think that Scott Boras is not lying to you and making stuff up, you're going to end up with this short-term crappy deal. The Mets won every part of this deal. The worst that happens is Pete Alonso gets hurt and stinks, and he picks up his player option for $24 million next year, and Steve Cohen writes a check. 24 divided by 6 is $4 million a month for 6 months. Hold your nose, hold your breath. Pay the money, and then you're done with Alonso. You're not staring at him for 6 to 8 years as he gets old and has to be a DH where he can't be a DH because you already have a DH signed for 15 years by the name of Juan Soto. It's amazing that Boras thought that he would get 2 DHs into their 30s with the Mets. It's almost like he wasn't paying attention, or like he does a deal and then forgets about that deal, doesn't actually look at the team, which is even funnier to me. Because when you negotiate with Scott Boras, he gives you this big binder that analyzes your team and what his free agent will do to your team. And everyone in baseball looks at it and wipes their tuchus with it because we analyze our team. We don't need Scott Boras to tell us, oh, you put Pete Alonso at first base, you keep Vientos at third base, you got yourself a deep lineup plus Juan Soto. Forget about it. You're looking at winning the pennant. Well, you're looking at getting to the NLCS. Well, you are looking at competing in the National League East. Oh, you are looking at chop shops. Can you imagine Pete Alonso turning down 7 years, $158 million, which he did with his previous agent? It's a good one, Coca. It's a good one. Now, I will say, I've said this from the minute they signed Soto. If you don't bring back Alonso, then you've only gotten better incrementally from Alonso to Soto. Now that you've brought Alonso back, you're incrementally better all of Soto. You are a better team. And of course, you have Clay Holmes. Do you know what the Mets are in Vegas? Do you know what the odds are on your app? The Mets are picked in all those great projections that we never pay attention to, obviously, to finish, wait for it, third in the National League East, behind the Braves, behind the Phillies. Yeah, maybe they'll win 90 games, but finishing third means you're playing a 2 out of 3 in the wild card if you're lucky enough to make the playoffs, although at 90 wins you should, and then you're subject to the whims of an 0 for 12 series by Soto, the way you saw the Dodgers lose when they lost to the Diamondbacks. How does this one end? What do you think, Coca? Should we do one? I'd like you to do the wait to see today. What do you have for the Mets? Coca, do you have the Mets winning the pennant? Do you have the Mets winning the division? Are you willing? What is like the ceiling for the Mets in your mind, if you had a guess? They're your favorite team. He's thinking. This is what we are going to have as our wait to see, and this is a special Coca wait to see. So you can mark this for February 6, 2025. Wait to see. We're all going to have fun. Boy, that's really quality. Our audience is super stoked to hear that analysis. All right, fine. I'll give you the wait to see. The New York Mets will not be in the National League Championship Series. Put it on the document. That's our second wait to see of the day. The New York Mets with Alonso and Soto and 2 Boras clients will not be in the NLCS. They will have a very large luxury tax bill, however. All right, when we come back, it's Thursday, and whether I'm in Miami, whether I'm in New York, whether I'm traveling, Thursday means I'm going to review one of the top 100 movies. Where are they? Let me hear you from the abyss of the camera on davidsamsonpodcast.com. We're going to review a movie, and then we're going to go back to baseball. And don't worry, in the next 21 minutes, I will mention the words Super Bowl. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Nothing Personal. It's David Sampson. Thank you for downloading, subscribing. Please hit subscribe. YouTube, Nothing Personal with David Sampson. We're going to catch Pablo one of these days. There's a movie, Coca, that's not available for streaming. Did you know that? That I had to watch one of my top 100, and the only way I could do it is I had to have someone who helps me technologically because I am completely incapable of doing it. I had to re-plug in a DVD player. I don't know how many of you ever do that, but computers don't have them anymore. I used to have a freestanding DVD player, and I have a DVD of Grand Canyon. Forget the Blu-ray player. I couldn't find it. I have the DVD. I have the Blu-ray. Grand Canyon, written by Lawrence Kasdan, starring Kevin Kline, Steve Martin, Mary McConnell, Mary Louise Parker, Danny Glover, Alfred Woodward, Jeremy Sisto. I had to watch it on DVD. And let me tell you, it's number 14 on my list for a reason. And people can make fun of it. I went back and read some reviews saying the movie hasn't aged well. It was a 90s attempt at the big chill that was way too easy, and how it dealt with racism and class and fear and loathing and not Las Vegas. Well, I watched it again through the only eyes that I have, not having been replaced Tom Cruise style. And what I saw was brilliance. The relationship that I have with Los Angeles is such that I can see every side. I can't live every side, but I can see it. I can understand it. I can speak to people about it. I can understand fear. I can understand what it is to be in Hollywood and make movies that basically glorify violence and then say to yourself that you're representing what is, you're not creating what is. There are life lessons in the movie Grand Canyon. And maybe it's true that in 1998, I went to the Grand Canyon and changed my life. Maybe that's true. Maybe it's true that I'm predisposed to like a movie like this. But if you have a DVD player, please find a way to see Grand Canyon, because it's going nowhere but up when I make another top 100 list. So we have a random number generator, and it is generating the next movie for me to watch from my top 100 to be reviewed next Thursday, February 13th, the day before Valentine's Day. And the movie is, yes, Let It Ride. I'm going to get Le Batard to watch it with me. Le Batard, who was in New Orleans last night doing an amazing live show with Dan Patrick. They called it Conversation or Between Two Dans, like Between Two Ferns. It was a huge success. Ton of people. Thank you, if you're in New Orleans, to have gone out and done that. Will Dan be on the road again? Wait to see. He likes it. Let It Ride. We got the horse right here. His name is Paul Revere. Should we let it ride that the Tampa Bay Rays are going to get a ballpark done in St. Petersburg? Should we let it ride that the Oakland A's are not going to move to Las Vegas? When you give up on a take that you've had for so long and that you end up being wrong, I view that I'm not going to pull the ripcord. Is it ripcord or ripcord on a parachute? I think it's a ripcord because you rip it. I don't know why it'd be ribs if it doesn't open. You break your ribs? It is rip. I don't want to pull the ripcord on a take until I absolutely have to. I want to be like about to hit the ground and then pull it Tom Cruise Mission Impossible style. The Sacramento Aths. I'm here to talk about the Tampa Bay Rays. What a cluster. I went through it with the mayor. What was it yesterday? I don't remember who we were talking to. Ron McGill on the Le Batard show was dressed up like Don Corleone. He had the chain going. He had the open shirt. He looked fantastic. And he was dressed up because he was meeting with the mayor of Miami. He never said Miami-Dade or the city of Miami, because maybe there's a different dress code given the importance of Dade versus the city, but doesn't matter. When you deal with mayors, which, man, I had to do for so long, you do have to genuflect in their general direction. And you have to understand that when they talk, they feel as though they're talking to their constituents, to their power, meaning the people who donate money to them, their party. And you have to let them talk and not respond to every thing that they say that makes your blood boil. There's a mayor of St. Petersburg. His name is Ken Welch. He came out yesterday and he wanted to make it very, very clear to anyone who would listen. We don't need this Tampa Bay Rays stadium deal. The very deal that was agreed to, that was celebrated hand in hand, that they were so happy to redevelop St. Petersburg while giving control to Stu Sternberg for the profits of the redevelopment and the new ballpark in St. Pete because it's worked so well there. It's like, can you imagine building on the Orange Bowl site saying the Orange Bowl worked? Why wouldn't a baseball stadium work? Ken Welch came out and said, you know, if they're not going to play ball with us, then we're good. We're going to move on. People with the Tampa Bay Rays were paying attention. They were listening to the quote. And the quote was, "We will not pursue the deal at any cost." What does that mean? The Rays and St. Petersburg are still fighting over the cost of the ballpark because there's a year delay that Tampa claims happened because of the lack of floating bonds by St. Petersburg and the county. St. Petersburg is saying that is not true. We could get this open in 28. You're the one who hasn't started. Stu Sternberg came out and said, we've got till March 31st. We'll let you know. Well, on February 6th, the mayor of St. Petersburg said, here's my view. So hear me now and listen to me later. If you do not do what you said you were going to do in a timely manner, and if you come back to us for even $1, my answer's no. You do what you're contractually obligated to do, build that ballpark, pay for those overruns, including a 1-year delay, because I've got to spend money on redoing the Trop, over $50 million that I didn't plan to. I've got a bunch of people still crushed by the hurricane. I'm not giving you any more money. All he had to do, and so Ken Welch in the quote finished by saying, the greatness and future of St. Pete does not depend solely on this deal. If you are Commissioner Rob Manfred and you are Stu Sternberg and you hear Ken Welch do this, you have to be a veteran of these, which they are, and you have to ignore it. The problem is when you're knee deep in a deal and you hear a talking point done by the person you're negotiating against, it's really hard to get perspective. It's really hard to take the extra breath and say, oh, he doesn't really mean that. He's just saying it. And we've now got to give him a path to recovery. We've got to get extra money from him while giving him the out to his constituents that says this is what we needed to do for St. Pete. Nothing Ken Welch did closes the door on doing a stadium deal or helping finance the year delay. However, if you're Stu Sternberg, you're calling Ken Welch today. You have to do this. I remember responding to media things in the Miami Herald all the time. You wait until the next day. Then you call in to your negotiating counterpart. You make a call to the mayor. You put on a shirt. You button it almost to the top. You put on a chain. You slick your hair back. You go visit the mayor because they don't come to you. And you say, all right, let's take it down one notch, Chachi, and let's make some progress on our issues list. This is not a situation where Ken Welch is so advanced and so serious about his position that it's like Steve Cohen with Pete Alonso, where he basically told us and Boras at the same time, he's not moving. Ken Welch is not playing that type of chess. Why? Because his statement isn't true. You can redevelop St. Petersburg all you want, but without an anchor tenant like a Major League Baseball team, all of that low-income housing and hotels and office space, retail, all of it is not as buttressed as it is with an anchor tenant of a major league team. Hard stop. And a worse nightmare would be them actually going to Tampa. You'd rather, if you don't get a ballpark in St. Petersburg, you'd rather them go to northern New Jersey. Not going to happen. So we're going to see exactly what happens here going forward, but it may be dicey. How many times have I told you this? I want to remind you of something in my non-manicured, though never bitten or picked nails. You have to really hold on by the edge. You have to be slipping off the cliff like the cat in Flow. You have to be about to fall. Then something can happen. Movement in a deal can happen, but you got to really be at the edge. It's not March 31st yet. We're going to hear way more about this Tampa deal. Nothing. Personal pick of the day. I'm angry. I'm mortified. We had the Nets at -2. We had the line move where the Nets were giving like 4.5 after yesterday's show. I thought we had it in the bag. No Kuzma. The Wizards, the Nets coming off that great victory over Houston where Russell hit the 2 threes in the closing seconds. You're playing the worst team. You can't lose to the worst team. The Nets didn't just lose to the Wizards. They got blown out. We're back to 12-14. Livid. I love picks of the day on deadline day. One of the things about 3 p.m. in the NBA is that when the deadline passes, people are in the locker room. They've gone through their walk around, shoot around in the morning. They're back in the hotel if they're on the road. Some of them are getting treatment. Others have gone home for a few hours. Then you come back and get ready for the game. 3 o'clock is sort of the tweener time when the deadline is today. One of my favorite things is walking into the clubhouse after the deadline, looking around and winking. A little pat on the tuchus. Told you, we're all good. Let's go now. There are 2 teams playing tonight that are in that position. You've got the Warriors playing the Lakers. Who do you think feels better about their deadline? The Warriors or the Lakers? Going forward, you have to say it's the Lakers. They've got Luka at 25, the face of the franchise going forward. They got a big man in Mark Williams. The problem is Luka's not playing. You're looking around and saying, the people we traded are gone. The people we acquired are not here. The Warriors, I actually don't know the answer to this, Coca, and I should have looked. Jimmy Butler, I assume, is not playing for the Warriors tonight. I assume he'll take the number of days that he gets to report. Do we have any information? I assume he's not going to be in Golden State playing tonight. But the Warriors look around and they say, look what our guys did for us. They ignored Steve Kerr. They ignored Steph Curry. We got a shot. That's why I'm taking the Warriors plus 7.5. There is such tremendous relief in your clubhouse after the deadline, that whether your team has been a buyer or a seller, there's just a better feeling after the deadline. Certain teams take advantage of it. Certain teams don't. I got the Warriors taking advantage of that tonight. A word, not from our sponsor, a word from a negotiator. When you're out in public saying things, just be careful that you don't talk in absolutes. And be careful that you don't say things that the other side you're negotiating against will dismiss summarily within 2 seconds because it's so ridiculous. 3 days ago, Roger Goodell took to the microphone trying to capture all of the media's attention by saying 18 regular season games. That makes sense. 18 regular season games, 2 preseason games, 18 plus 2. We're good. 3 days later, 2 days later, because it was yesterday, 3 days later is now, there's a guy named Lloyd Howell. Lloyd Howell is the executive director of the NFL Players Association. Lloyd Howell decided to speak up and said, no one wants to play an 18th game. No one. Of course, he's just talking about players, and he's not right, but let me continue with this quote. 17 games is already, for many of the guys, too long. 17 games is so lengthy that you're still dealing with injuries going into the next season. Several issues, he said, would have to be addressed before any true negotiations could be opened into expanding the season. Bye weeks, roster size, practice squad size, length of the offseason, number of international games played. Oh my God, Lloyd, what are you doing? Why are you signaling to the owners what your pressure points are publicly? You know you're giving in on 18 games. You know that's happening. Why are you listing the things that you want? It's like the baseball union when they talked about all the creature comforts and how super excited they were to have a chef in the kitchen and to not have to land at 4 a.m. I absolutely love when I'm negotiating with someone who goes out and tells me, all right, this is what it's going to be. The problem is when you are Lloyd Howell and you talk to the media, you got to pay attention to A, what you've said to the media previously, and B, what your players are actually saying to you. Because the owners are not prize fools, and neither is Roger Goodell. Lloyd Howell himself last year, when asked about 18 games, quote, "It sounds attractive. Who doesn't want to see more football, myself included?" Do you think that Roger Goodell goes into a negotiating session with Lloyd Howell, blows up on a big poster board his quote from last year, then blows up his quote from this year, then has a whiteboard that has the issues, hey, international games, hey, bye weeks, hey, roster size. All right, Lloyd, no problem. We're going to add someone to the roster. That's exciting. That person could get benefited. That person could have a 2 or 3 year career. That person will make the minimum. We're not going to increase the size of the cap or the percentage of revenue you get, but don't worry. You asked for it. We're going to give it to you. That's how much we respect the union. We're going to allow another player. International games? Shh. You have no say on that. Oh, I'm sorry. We'll fly you first class in a charter. What else? Practice squad. Practice? Practice? We don't need practice. I'm just laughing to myself because it's such poor negotiating and they're just going to get hammered. The NFL Players Association is going to get rolled. 18 games is coming. Roger Goodell has it perfectly. He said, let's not say it's done. I think you may have misunderstood me. We're going to have to really talk about this. Of course you are. It's part of collective bargaining. Can you talk about it during the course of a deal? Yes, you can reopen a collective bargaining agreement, especially when you want to get it extended. Believe you me. You think Roger Goodell announced that the Rams are playing in Australia in 2026, and then he's going to say to Lloyd Howell, you're right. We've done enough internationally. Forget it. Everything that I've been working for 10 years and putting up with Shad Khan and his yacht and having the Jaguars in London, forget it. Let's just cede the continent to Adam and to Rob. Surely you must be kidding. How about this one? Greg Abbott of Texas has done something yesterday. What a weird time we are in politically. I'm not going to, maybe on today's Levitard, Coca, there's so much to talk about with tariffs, with Gaza, with U.S. aid. I want to get to a lot of that stuff. But in the last 2 minutes here, I want to mention something that's happening in Texas that will make the Adelsons love life. Remember Miriam Adelson, Dallas Mavericks, casinos, gambling, Texas, Mavericks. Is any of this ringing a bell? Well, guess what? Greg Abbott, out of nowhere, has now said, I'm ready. Let's not look to see who donates to my party or to me, but I am ready to allow online sports betting in the state. That's huge. It's huge for DraftKings. It's huge for everyone, all the apps. It's on the way to where we're going to be, which is 50 states, not counting Canada as the 51st state. Give me a small break. Will have legalized gambling on your app sooner than you can say Jack Sprout lives in Toronto. Greg Abbott went onto a podcast. It's called Texas Take Podcast. And he basically said, I have no objection if the Texas legislature is going to pass a law so we can join the 39 other states. Why does that matter? Because when you are lobbying the legislature for whatever you want, whatever you're trying to get accomplished, you always have to also work with the governor. Because the number of trades that happen when a legislative session is underway you can get wrapped up in another trade not of your doing, and your entire goal can be swept away, or you can be attached to another bill. There's so many trades that go on. You've got to have the governor in place. And in order to have the governor in place, you have to go through a lot of different steps. You know you have it when the governor goes public, because this is not the mayor of St. Petersburg. When Greg Abbott says that he is fine with legalized gambling, that means no veto. That means you've got it on to the next, on to the vote in the Texas legislature. If you are DraftKings or anybody, you are looking at Greg, you're looking at the possibilities, you're saying it's just business. We'll be back tomorrow. This is nothing personal.